You are a broke filmmaker and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars for lenses, but you want that sweet bokeh of that specific prime lens? Don't worry, I got you covered.
Waiting, patient, only thing that I've never been good at. Chasing ways to have you to myself just like I should, yeah. Controlling all of my thoughts, I want you on my body. Turning me on, baby, you know you got me. Got me tripping over all of these lines, I can't fight you. I'm spinning down, head over my heart, turning inside out. Love me in the dark, looking at you now. I can't get enough when you touch me like that. Stick around, swear when we're together, heaven's on the ground. I'll do this forever, looking at you now. I can't get enough, I don't know how you did it when you touch me like that. Stick around, swear when we're together, heaven's on the ground. I'll do this forever, looking at you now. I can't get enough, I don't know how you did it, boy, you got me spinning.
The Viltrox 24mm lens is a f1.8 prime lens with autofocus for your Sony E-mount camera, and it costs only 1/3 of the G Master lens. Short disclaimer, I got this unit from Viltrox to review, but I did not get paid by them, nor do they see it before it's released, so without any further ado, let's start. The lens is mainly built out of metal and feels really nice in your hands. It is also special because it has a seamless manual aperture ring. That can come in handy for filmmakers, and normally you only get a seamless aperture ring only on manual film lenses. But it also has an auto aperture mode, which is separated from the other aperture steps. One thing I didn't like on the lens is the lens hood. I actually had problems putting it on for the first time, and the plastic here feels not the highest quality. But let's keep in mind, even on G Master lenses, these hoods are made out of plastic. The lens also has a wide focus ring that travels really smoothly and lets you focus really precisely. But let's be honest, we have a Sony A7S III here with great autofocus, and we are all lazy, so we just use the autofocus instead, which is our next subject I want to talk about. Having an autofocus system in a lens in this price range maybe lets you think, can it really be any good and match up with other Sony lenses? And I can assure you, the autofocus in this lens is precise and tracks your subject just like any other lens from Sony that I own. The only difference here is that the Viltrox is using a STM stepping motor, while most of the Sony lenses are using a linear motor. In reality, I don't care about that, as long as my videos and photos appear sharp and the autofocus is not making any distracting noises, and that is not the case with Viltrox either. I couldn't hear the autofocus motor in any situation. The eye and face detection of your Sony camera works without any problem and tracks a person in most situations. Even with fast motion and difficult lighting, I had no problems tracking the model here in these example shots. I only need to mention that the focus speed is a little bit slower than from my Sony lenses. Here's a quick comparison between the different speed settings with the Viltrox lens. In this example, the speed is set to 5 and the focus travels really nice and smoothly. Now here with the speed setting of 3, you can clearly see that the speed is a lot slower than before, and here's the max speed setting set to 7. I normally use the focus speed setting 4 on my Sony A7S III, and the focus on my 35mm 1.8 lens from Sony snaps really quickly between the minimal and the maximal focus distance, sometimes even too fast. For the Viltrox, I use the speed settings around 5 to 7, while 7 is the max speed on the Sony A7S III, but I had no situation where the focus failed to follow the subject. Next up, the image quality. Video-wise, the quality is great, the image is sharp, and I cannot see a huge difference compared to some of my Sony lenses. But please keep in mind this test shot I even used a ProMist filter, which reduces the image sharpness and is blurring the highlights a little bit more to make that dreamy look. I always find the in-camera sharpening at 4K on Sony almost too sharp, and when I shoot in S-Log the internal sharpening is already set to -3. But using a ProMist filter or variable ND, it reduces the sharpening even more, so still at this level I find the Viltrox sharp enough to produce great looking footage. Photography with this lens is pretty much as fun as shooting video with it. I use it for some body shots because I always wanted to try some fashion style portraits with a 24mm lens. Please consider that I shot these also with my Sony A7S III, which only provides 12 megapixels for photos. But for social media this is pretty much all I need. I know landscape photographers are really pixel peeping here and always want sharp corners with all lenses they use. But for this specific scenario you might want to watch other reviews, as I don't cover that topic in my video. But I must say, with this lens and heavy backlighting, I got some problems with the eye autofocus in photo mode, where the focus isn't always pinpoint sharp on the eye. But it also is a challenge for every lens, but I still ended up with some sharp images that I could use for my edit. The bokeh is quite good. It's a little bit oval at f1.8 at the corners, but that's a behavior I see even on my 35mm or 55mm Sony lens. An aperture of f1.8 on full frame for me is most likely enough, and more is not always better. Well, I don't own the 24mm f1.4 G Master lens, so I cannot make a comparison at this point. Of course, you will get a better lens in terms of functions, autofocus and image quality, which leads me to my final conclusion. The Viltrox performs overall quite good, but I don't see a reason why a f1.4 G Master lens justifies the 3 times higher price. The Viltrox comes around $400, while the G Master comes around 1.3K. Of course, if money is not a problem, go for the G Master. But actually, after using it for some of my video shoots, I absolutely love it. And it definitely will stay in my arsenal, as I always wanted to have a fast prime lens at this focal length. So if you don't own a 24mm lens and the G Master is too expensive for you, you should consider buying this one instead. And you still have enough money to buy a second lens. I hope this helped you to make a decision, and I see you in my next video. Bye!